This episode of The Edge is brought to you by Audible.com, offering more than 180,000 titles for smartphone, tablet, and desktop. To get a free audiobook of your choice and help Trek.fm at the same time, visit audibletrial.com/trekfm. And also by Enterprise in Space, an international program of the nonprofit National Space Society. Find out how you can help science and education and become a virtual crew member aboard the NSS Enterprise Orbiter by visiting enterpriseinspace.org. And if you want to join the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode, join the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the Facebook search field. We look forward to seeing you there.
Hey, this is Jeff Russo. I'm the composer from Star Trek Discovery, and you're listening to Trek FM.
What have you done out there on the edge of Federation space?
Welcome, listeners, to The Edge, Trek FM's dedicated podcast to Star Trek Discovery. I'm your host, Amy Nelson, and with me is Pat Devlin. Pat, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm doing better than I was last week. I had a Lorca moment where I shot a fire alarm cable into my eye, like he did with that little needle for his sensory issues he had going on. So, but I'm fine now. Everything's fine. The eye's healed up. I have no permanent damage. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. So are we having mirror Pat, or are we?
Yeah,
crime?
maybe.
Yeah.
I do have the goatee, right? And that's part of it. It used to be part of it.
Yeah. Well, I'm doing good. Your work injuries are a lot more physical than mine. I just have students not doing their homework, so.
I'd rather mine. Mine are easier to deal with. I only have to deal with myself, and that's easier than what you have to put up with. Clearly,
yeah.
But it's funny because I've gone 10 years without a serious injury, and then I've had like two in.
I know. I
2
have
months.
to keep checking. You need to be checking in on Facebook. Patrick is safe.
Yeah. Went to work today. Mark safe.
Yeah. Well, we got some pretty good news recently. Season 2 has been extended by one more episode. So we get 14 instead of the originally planned 13 episodes. How do you feel about that?
I like it because to me, what that says is they put together this season. They realized they didn't have enough time to do all that they wanted to. And they added another episode to make sure that they do it right.
Yeah. Because I think, for season 1, they added 2 episodes. And so I'm liking this trend that they keep on adding more. So that's good.
Yeah, it also says to me that they feel that people want it. If they felt that people didn't want to watch it, then they'd be cutting episodes out, not adding them in.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So.
All right. Well, we are here to discuss the short trek. This is the third, 3 out of 4, The Brightest Star. This is our Saru-centric short trek. So, Pat, let's start with your initial thoughts. Like, what did you think of this lovely short trek?
Okay, I'm going to ask people to bear with me because my initial thoughts and then my other thoughts are completely 180 of each other.
Which is so weird because it's the same show that you saw. So I'm very interested to know what happened.
But okay, so I didn't actually watch it a second time for my opinion to change. I actually sat and thought about it and my opinion changed. And I also listened to a few people. Like I was listening to the live show with Bruce and Brandy, and that actually helped me. I didn't actually agree with a lot of what they said, but it led me down a path to where okay, so my initial thoughts is I did not like it at all. It left too many questions for me. It did, because not that the short trek itself didn't explain itself, it did very well. The problem is I felt like it completely contradicted everything we've learned about Saru up until this moment. That he talks about them huddling together in a pack, but we don't really see that. I mean, we see them in a little town, like village, but we hear about them being bred to be hunted, but we don't see that, right? None of that actually happens. They're giving themselves up. So I was like, this is kind of nonsense. And then I thought about it, and everything changed for me because I think both can actually still be true. And it's just, we'll get into it as we get deeper in, but I think the society has actually changed where I mean, so basically, they were once just hunted, or there might even be things out in the wilderness that still hunt them. But that's not the part of the story we're looking at. If that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah.
So what were your initial thoughts?
Yeah, we'll get into that a little more because I have that. Yeah, I want to talk about that hunting aspect that we've learned. So my initial thoughts, I felt like it was a very complete story. I thought it was more complete than Calypso. And listeners, if you remember, I loved Calypso and I loved the feelings that I had from Calypso. And this was a little different. I'm still going to put Calypso just a little bit above this, The Brightest Star, but I liked that we knew the character and that it's fitting so well. Well, I think it fits in so well with what we already know about Saru and adds so much context and texture to his character that I was okay with Saru, but this really makes him an outstanding character because of his hope and his curiosity and what he was able to do and him questioning his culture and the traditions of his father and stuff like that, that takes a very special person. And then to see that recognized by Georgiou, like that, it just made me say, oh, this is Starfleet, that they're looking for the best. They're looking for, those people who have these ideals that are, Starfleet ideals, and they're being recognized and rewarded for that. And so I felt that it was really a lovely Star Trek message for this.
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of that. Even on first viewing, I would agree with a lot of that. On first viewing, I felt like I was really stuck on the hunting thing. Mm-hmm. That clearly is not shown anywhere in here. Mm-hmm. It's clearly absent. In fact, it's the exact opposite of hunting. It's giving yourself up. But anyway, that was just my initial thoughts. Now, as we talk through the rest of our topics tonight, you're going to hear that everything I just said is a lie moving forward. But that's okay. Because I love the visuals of this short. They were amazing, even from the very start when you just get the just them pulling seaweed and kelp out of the ocean, which is really cool. Like it just seems like a very tight knit community at that point. Like that's kind of what they're looking to go for, I think, and I think they hit it well. And then when his sister, I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but Sarana, she pulls that flower, she cuts the flower, and just the jungle that's around them and the bird like the butterfly like bird that's flying around, like the visuals were just stunning. And so I really enjoyed those. I just was confused through my whole first watch through because I kept waiting for a hunter. Mm-hmm. I know I try not to go in with any expectations, but when you have a character who's literally talked about being hunted for an entire season, you expect to see a hunter at some point.
Well, let's talk about that because it seems like, and after doing postcards from the edge, like someone made the comment that it sort of made sense to me that now this threat ganglia is more for that religious ceremony and not so much being hunted. Like, so we know his famous line, I sense the coming of death, like because of that religious ceremony that they have with the Baul. And I thought, okay, that makes a little more sense that it's more tied. And I think the comment was a religious allegory. So that threat ganglia isn't as supposed to be as spot on as we were expecting. And I think that if we look at it in a religious context, that makes a little more sense and can sort of maybe ease your doubts of the threat ganglia, Pat?
Well, it doesn't ease the doubts. They're still just useless. But it gives them an explanation that makes sense. It gives them a purpose. The problem is that's not how they packaged it to us. The writers did not package it that way throughout the entire first season. And I'm not going to blame this short for that shortcoming. You know what I mean? So I enjoyed this. I enjoyed that they had this in here, and it gives me something to to look on, but one of two things. Either the writers just changed course mid-season because they realized they didn't know how to write for this thing, or Saru was lying when he senses the coming of death. I mean, he was just trying to rally, which is fine. I'm okay with leaders just saying things to rally the troops. So, if everyone believes he can sense all death and he can lie and say, I don't sense it right now. And technically he's not lying at that moment because there is no religious ceremony going on. So he doesn't sense death at the moment. Doesn't matter that everyone's going to die. I mean, he was dead wrong. Most people died. So he was definitely wrong about the I don't sense death thing the first time he said it, but it's fine. If this is the context we're going to use it in from now on, I like it. I like that this is the answer. And I don't have a problem with the fact that he would have said something to get troops or his crew to follow him when maybe necessarily they weren't ready for it. Because that's what good leaders do.
Right. Yeah. So with this religious ceremony, what I like about Saru is that he's always questioning, right? And I love him talking to his father. And again, the dialogue I thought was just so good. And his father just used that lame old excuse. Well, if we were supposed to fly, we would have wings. I mean, that's such... I mean, I don't know if you were raised in any religion, but, sometimes the ceremonies and the traditions and the practices, you sort of sometimes have to question them. I mean, in part, if you want to follow, then you sort of need to have that explanation. And I think we use in Star Trek, your headcanon, how is it fitting in with what I'm thinking, what I know, and how can I make it work? Or questioning for, how can I not follow this because it's not working? There's questioning, I think, for two different purposes. Do you think he was questioning to make it work or questioning because he thought it was wrong?
I think he was questioning because he thought it was wrong, personally. Now, that might mean just because you think it's wrong doesn't mean you're not trying to make it work. You could be trying to figure out how to make this work where maybe you don't have to die, where you could still... because they talk about the watchful eye. Maybe this isn't what the watchful eye really wants. That doesn't mean you think it's right and you want it to work for you. That means you think it's wrong, but you still want the watchful eye to work. I was raised Roman Catholic, but now when I was raised, in the 80s, you could ask questions, but in the 1680s, you couldn't pull that off. It would be just like it was with Saru. So I think they're trying to give you kind of a time frame for us to see the religion as, compared to where we are today. And we haven't gone as far as, say, Star Trek would be at that point, but we've come a long way since you do it because, the 1680s was the Salem witch trials for the Puritans, so, we've come a long way since, or the 1630s, something like that. We've come a long way since then, but I think that's what they were trying to get conveyed to us, that this is still kind of a religion, almost kind of in its adolescence, before you could even question it.
So we don't get to see the Ba'ul. So I really am curious. Have you thought about? Do you have any speculations? Do you think that these are aliens from another planet? Do you think it's people living on the same planet taking advantage of the Kelpiens there? What do you think of that obelisk thing that sort of transports them, or somehow that's how they get sacrificed or killed or whatever?
Yeah, so this is a weird one because I don't want them to be on the other side of the planet. I just think that would be stupid. Because I want them to be in space because it makes all my other arguments after this better. But so I think they have the technology to get off the planet. And I think they did get off the planet. I think this goes into what becomes my headcanon for a lot of this. So you're doing a DS9 watch through, right?
Yeah.
Have you come across the episode? What's the name of that episode? Oh, Captive Pursuit?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So I feel that the Kelpiens are Tosk.
Oh.
Which we don't really know if Tosk is his name or his whatever, his culture. But I feel that they were, because at some point during the show, he said we were bred for one purpose. And, it's to sense the coming of death. But no, it wasn't to sense the coming of death. It was to sacrifice yourself. You see, those wordings are being twisted now. Mm-hmm. And sensing the coming of death meant going and standing at the obelisk and being sacrificed. Which makes sense. That all makes sense to me. But I feel that they were, in fact, bred for this, that they were created to be this. So they might not have been, they might have been no more than cattle at one point. And they were bred to be smarter, maybe because they do take them up and hunt them, or maybe they don't. Maybe they just kill them. Everyone speculates that they get hunted because they've used that word. My only problem with just making that leap is that nobody's ever come back, so you don't know what happens on the other side. It's not like they've ever come back and said, "Oh, we're hunted over there." So I don't know why people are making that automatic leap. It kind of makes sense, but I don't know why they're making that automatic leap to that. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm with you, because I would like the Ba'ul to be from a different planet. And, I think that then we can get some more social commentaries and, coming and taking advantage of a less technologically advanced race and stuff like that. Because I think, and we don't see the Ba'ul, and I don't think that we see really a lot of Kelpiens. Like, we see their one little tiny town, and I'm like, they can't, we don't know. I don't know, but they can't breed fast enough. How many people were in that circle? At least
right.
5, 6, 7, 8, and if they're taking that many each time.
Adults.
Yeah, adults.
You assume they're all adults, right? So, because they all appeared to be adult size.
Right, yeah.
And it was weird. That was a weird scene. I actually really liked that scene because two of them kind of one looked kind of afraid, one looked like the light was hurting them, and the other one looked like they were happily going. Like this is my calling.
Right.
And I like that because I think in a human society you would have similar reactions depending on who was being sacrificed. Most people would be afraid. Most people would be nervous at the very least. Some people would kind of just be indifferent, like the guy with the light. And then I think some would just think that was their calling and they're going to be someone famous for it.
Well, or not even famous, but they are living their faith, and that is, what they were meant to do. So they were fulfilling what they were meant to do. And so their faith is making it okay that this is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing.
Right, which is reiterated when Saru asks, "What about when I have to go?" And his father says, "It'll be your time." And I don't know exact words, but excuse me, he said, "It'll be your time, and you should be honored to keep the balance." Like, what do I care about the balance? I don't care about the balance. Bruce came up with a good explanation for that when he said that maybe there was a war and this was the agreement that there would no longer be a war.
Oh, yeah.
If they just gave themselves up. And maybe that's true. Maybe that's where it goes eventually. But I know myself, I'd be pissed if this was our agreement. I'd rather get wiped out than sit around and waiting to die.
Yeah. So with Saru now being gone, and I would believe that everyone would know that he wasn't taken by the Ba'ul, that's going to change things.
Or is it?
Well, since he was taken by Starfleet, I don't think anyone else has come by and taken a Kelpien that's not the Ba'ul.
I agree, but so we see in that scene, though, you're right. It just might not be for that reason, because we see in that scene, his sister says to him, "I have this unsettling urge to get back to safety." So clearly they're afraid to go outside their village. So they must believe there's some kind of hunter out there. Maybe it's an animal or something, we're the top of the food chain here, but I don't want to run into a lion, so they might just think he gets killed.
Well, that could.
Now that's all out. That goes all out the window because we see his sister sees the ship leave.
Yeah. Well, and
So-
sort of we get the feeling that there's this light, which is similar to the Baul. So maybe she, goes back to the village and says, well, Saru has been taken. Because I don't think that she would have any other explanation in her head other than that she's been taught.
Right. True. See, I was thinking that maybe, we'll get into the Prime Directive and I'll talk about this part when we talk about that part.
Yeah. Well, and that's where I wanted to go, because Saru is taken not by the Baul, but is taken by Lieutenant Georgiou. So what did you think when you saw her? And did you know, I didn't even imagine that Michelle Yeoh, she's huge and she's on this little short. Like, I'm so impressed with CBS. I'm just saying.
I agree. I absolutely agree. And I was listening to Bruce and Brandon. I keep bringing it up, but I just listened to it today. And they both were like, it could only be her. And I was like, I didn't even see it coming.
Yeah, no.
Like, I thought it was going to be just some random Starfleet captain that came down and got him or something along that nature. But for it to be her, that was awesome. The only problem I had was that it's a lieutenant.
Okay, I was just going to say, would a lieutenant really be the one going out to, fetch him?
So two things. I don't think so, except we did hear her backstory is that she was she was a foot soldier at one point. So she might be on the away team that goes and gets him. She wouldn't be alone like it kind of portrays it. But the other side of that annoys me, a lieutenant wouldn't be going and begging people to go get someone off a planet either. Like, that would be you'd have to pass that to a captain, and a captain would have to make those requests.
So it's been made a similar situation to pen pals of Next Gen. So Lieutenant Commander Data, right, and receives this distress call, and then, yes, does take it to Captain Picard. So she could have, intercepted the transmission that Saru sent out and had been contacting with, and communicating with Saru, just like Data was with the Sarangi. Oh, shoot. You know who I'm talking about, the little girl.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Episode too.
Okay. I'm so sorry, listeners. You can let me know in the comments.
Or just go back and check out one of the other episodes Amy talks about it on Earl Grey.
Which we do. So I can see it's like pen pals, but flipped. So now we're getting it from, Saru's side. And so I was totally on board with Georgiou saying, we were trying and we were, getting this, but you reached out to us. And so because of pen pals, I'm totally fine with them, I guess, bending the Prime Directive, reaching out to a civilization. And it isn't a civilization. It is just one person, but reaching out.
No, that part doesn't bother me.
And, with a pre-warp civilization.
That part doesn't bother me.
Okay.
Actually, the exact opposite bothers me. But the part that bothers me is that she makes it out, and maybe it's just the way she says it, and I'm reading it wrong because I'm reading too much into it, that she went above the captain, and she went back to Starfleet, and she got them to okay her going there. You're a lieutenant. That's not your job.
Well, yeah. So I didn't take it that way. Well, I took it as we, as in me, as in the collective, we on our ship, we on our crew, the captain, and everyone was involved with it.
Okay, well then that fixes it for me.
Yeah.
So I know, I know it's such a stupid sticking point, but for someone who was in the military, like, there's a chain of command that I know it's not always followed in Star Trek, but like in this scenario, I just felt like it should be, especially when the gravity of the response is you're never coming back.
Yeah.
And that's what I have a problem with. I have a huge problem with that answer.
Why?
You won't talk to people that are not that are pre-warp, right? Okay, that's great. And you got that from the Vulcans. Awesome. Who came to a planet that only really one person knew anything about warp drive in the humans. And we were a disarray with people living in little villages wearing minks and stuff, but not the nice kind, so give me a break. It's one person that knows how to talk. If you didn't want to come because he knows how to communicate only, then don't come. But don't give me we're not ever talking to anyone else on your planet because they're all idiots excuse. Because the humans after World War III were all a bunch of idiots, except for Zephyr Cochrane, who turned out to be a drunk.
Right.
So, I don't know. Star Trek uses the Prime Directive all the time, and I just feel like it's used just to tell you why it shouldn't exist. And this is a prime example of why the Prime Directive shouldn't exist.
Well, and I think, because I think they're still trying to work things out with the Prime Directive. It's still in its infancy. It's how many years after Enterprise, right? 40?
No, yeah.
But then this would
100.
even be closer because this is 15 years before Discovery. So.
Right. So you're probably looking at 80 to 85 years after Enterprise. But it doesn't matter because the Prime Directive has its problem throughout the entire run of Star Trek. It's always wrong, and the only time we bring it up is when we're breaking it, and it makes perfect sense to break it. Because when we don't break it, someone dies. It's just the way it is. Watch even the 2009 movie. That set of movies. You got them fixing a volcano and getting caught by the people of that planet. And they're in trouble. But are they really in trouble? Because they just saved a civilization that maybe wasn't supposed to be destroyed in the first place. Maybe, just maybe, because the whole argument is we don't talk to pre-warp because we don't want to get them to be warp for some reason. That doesn't make sense. But we don't want to influence them towards warp. And also, we don't want to change the natural evolution of planets. Maybe the natural evolution of that planet was for you to show up and beat the snot out of the people that were just murdering them. Maybe that was the natural evolution of things. And you just drove the other way and you messed up the whole natural evolution of everything.
Maybe.
The Prime Directive drives me crazy. It does. And it's not that this short used it wrong. It used it completely correctly.
Yep, yeah.
I think it's supposed to drive me crazy. I think this is exactly the reaction they're looking for.
Yeah. Well,
because we do this on Earth. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, so going back to the sticking point of that you're never going to come back. Well, I think that's a little presumptuous to say that the Kelpiens are never going to get warp. Like, what if they, with Saru being gone, start asking more questions? He can't be the only intelligent, curious Kelpien there there on the planet. So to say never, I just feel like that's such a succinct word that it's like, okay, well, if they do get warp, then yes, we will be contacting them or, we'll run into them. So to use the word never sort of was, but I think it's, maybe she was saying it for, well, never in your lifetime, seeing how some civilizations progress, there's going to be an average and we don't know how long they live. Mostly because they all die from the Ba'ul.
Right, correct. And the only one we really have any knowledge of is Saru. Like his life cycle would be the only ones we understand at all, which they haven't given us anything about that. But I think so. To answer that, because I agree with you, I think saying never is ridiculous. But being the fact that the Ba'ul is killing them off without letting them evolve, the fact that they have it seems like the Starfleet has paid a little more attention to this than George O's letting on, because she says, well, it's not every day that a pre-warp society contacts us with someone else's technology. So there's a little bit more knowledge there than we just happen to be floating through and got a message from you. But seeing as that happens, I would think that maybe they do know they're very religious, and that in Star Trek world is a negative usually. Although we did see that change a little bit in Deep Space Nine, and then on top of that, if you tell him, well, maybe one day if they get it, he might want to work towards that ends and break Starfleet's rules. If you tell him never, he's more likely to just give up the idea. Would be my only explanations for it. I don't agree with any of them, but that would be my explanations for them.
Right, yeah. So one thing that going on to Sarana, and we know that we will see her in season 2, and we know that they will come back to the home world. So again, that never see them again doesn't make sense, but whatever. But
well, as soon as they said that, you knew they were coming back.
Right? Exactly.
So.
Exactly. There you go. So Saru's always looking up, right? Looking to the stars and that curiosity. I love that. That's so Star Trek. And it reminded me, I know people are going to roll their eyes, of Nemesis when Shinzon and Picard are talking and they complete each other's sentences. And they're like, have you ever just looked up in the stars and wondered what's out there? And they're going back and forth. I love, love, love that in Nemesis. And it reminded me here because Saru is always looking up and asking questions in this curiosity. And his sister, which I think is similar to Picard and Robert, where Robert is in with the vines and the soil and the grapes and the wine, like on the earth, on the ground, looking down, and being stable. And Sarana says, well, look down here because there's beauty here as well. And I love that Star Trek really gets to show both of those sides, that you can see beauty out there. You can see it in your future. And you should also see it here where you are in the present, being grounded and seeing beauty where you are, not just looking towards the future. And I thought that was so important for the last line that Saru says, that, his hope for the future overcame his fear of wanting to run in.
Okay, so I actually had that written down. If you didn't say it, I was gonna bring it up. So first he says to Giorgio, my place is no longer here, in a very somber tone. But then the narration of him goes, I saw hope in the stars. It was stronger than fear, and I went toward it. And it's one of the greatest Star Trek lines of all times. And I really mean that. It's just a short. It's the end of a short. And I don't even like Saru as a character. And this is one of the greatest Star Trek lines ever. Because it's true. And it's true for most of the people in Star Trek. Hoshi on Enterprise says she's deathly afraid of starships, but she wants to go because what's out there is more important than what's here, or the fear of being there. And we've seen that time and time again with different characters in Star Trek. And this one epitomizes fear. I mean, he is the epitome of afraid of everything. Mm-hmm. And now he even says, as afraid of everything as I am, the allure of the stars was stronger than fear. That's a huge statement for someone in at least the culture that we perceive them as right now. And like you said, there's got to be more of them. There can't be 20 of them in a village, but you assume that all of them are like that, right? Like that this harvest is happening in more than one place on the planet or something along those lines. Or the village itself is way bigger than we've been led to believe in this short. So I do too. I love the fact that they talk about the stars, that he's always got his head in the stars and she's always looking telling him to look at the ground. Because I can't believe that was the first time she's ever said that to him. Mm-hmm. And then for it to end the way it did was just perfect.
Yeah. It was so good. And again, just that Star Trek feeling. And that's why I liked The Brightest Star so much, because of that philosophy that, permeates throughout.
Yeah, this is by far my favorite of the three. I mean, if people can't tell that by listening to these three, then I'm doing something wrong here, because this is clearly my favorite of the three. And it's for all these little messages. And, sitting here thinking about, wow, look at that. They kind of called back to, like you said, I didn't even think of the one from Next Generation with Pen Pal. And they called back to TOS. And they called back to Meeting Zephyr and Cochrane. And they called back to the Deep Space Nine episode, Captive Pursuit. Like, they called back to all these episodes. But if you've never watched any of them, it's still a great short. My wife sat here and watched it with me. And when it ended, she goes, that was amazing. It was the first words out of her mouth. And then I explained my problems with it the first time watching through. And she goes,
you need to stop doing that. Your poor wife.
Well, I this is what I do. But hey, she married me. That's her problem. So hey, that was a choice. She said yes. But she's right. It is amazing. It was an amazing short. And it was still amazing, even though she didn't pick up any of the references they threw out there. They were still, and we were talking about this on Warp 5 once. What's good fan fan service and what's not. And what in my definition is, if you can sit there, watch it and not know anything previous and still enjoy it, but I watch it and get a slightly different meaning out of it, then it's good fan service. And this was perfect because they did kind of call back to all these things in a way that it's not overt or it's not needed to understand what's going on here.
Yeah, agreed. So remember last time on Calypso, and we were talking about the passage of time and like how long Kraft was on the ship versus when he left.
Right.
Okay. I'm curious to know, there had to have been some time from when Saru took that fallen piece and was contacting. I mean, we only see that he sent out hello, and then we saw today. How much time do you think passed, or no time at all, between those two messages?
I think some, because he does mention that he thought he was never getting an answer back. So it had to be a significant amount of time, but I don't think any harvest happened. Now, that doesn't mean anything because we don't know how far apart harvests are. It could be a week, it could be a month, it could be a year. But I think a significant amount of time for him passed because they made a comment something to the effect of time passing, and I didn't know if I was ever going to get a message back. And then one day I did. Now, it couldn't have been, but then again, it could have been too long because wouldn't his father eventually have found it, or somebody eventually found it?
But not if he hid it.
It was under his bed.
Well, that's only what we saw.
Well, that's where he took it out of. He messed with it, and then that's where he took it out of again when it went off. So I believe it was under his bed.
Well, I think there was a significant amount of time because Lieutenant Georgiou says that it was nice to finally put a face to the name.
Yeah, so they must have been talking a bunch.
So they had to have been communicating. And she says that we had to try and convince Starfleet. So that convincing in a bureaucratic, huge, well, I guess it's not huge at this point, but, to go through all the red tape, that's got to take some time as well.
True.
So
very true.
I'm thinking much longer than what most people, I'm going to say even a year, but that's my evidence as to why I think it's really long.
that's definitely plausible. I mean, there's nothing that says it couldn't be that long or longer. Mm-hmm. Because like you said, I didn't even think of looking at what Georgiou said. And yeah, she did talk about putting a face to the conversation. So it would have to be more than hello today.
Yeah, it has to be more than hello today.
Right, because that doesn't make any sense. Yeah. And but now, isn't it a little odd that he can communicate in written word?
What do you mean written word?
Well, he sends hello.
Well, I think that was for our benefit because when she lands, she has to use the translator.
I know it, and I love it. I love the fact that she has it. I mean, I know they don't do it for the rest of the episode because that probably would get annoying after a few moments. Mm-hmm. But I love the fact that we hear her talk. And we don't usually, I mean, in Discovery but usually it only translates the one way for us to hear. But it was actually translating her to him and then him back to her or us. So I love that. But it showed a fake symbol, just a symbol to be a nothing's in this box and then HELLO. And then today was the whole thing. But he wrote it and even wrote the symbol in. So to me, that says that's what that shows.
Well, maybe that symbol was meaning the word hello. Maybe it was translating. And then we saw the symbol with today, and he was copying that, trying to learn our symbols compared to his symbols.
Maybe.
Ooh, I'm liking that. I'm going with that. Yeah.
Okay, fine. I'll give you that one. Because he does write the word today.
Yeah, but I mean, anyone can copy.
I know, but why could he read it then?
How do you know he read it?
How do you know to go there today?
Because it had his symbol before the word today.
Now, yes. Now that you're saying the first symbol is his language. But if we ignore that, then he did write today. So it wasn't like it was in his language on the screen.
Yeah, but we fixed
is what
that
I'm
because
saying.
now it is.
Yeah, well, you did. I had nothing to do with that. Last episode, I pointed out that my wife had come up with the one thing that followed between the two was compassion. And I was struggling to find that here. And I'm probably reading too much into it because I want to find it. But I think that the whole reason he did this was for compassion. I think that's how it started.
Compassion because for his race?
His culture. Yeah, his race, his people. That he doesn't want to keep seeing them die. And you can see when he sends his sister back, he does it because he loves her. And he doesn't really know what's going to happen. You know, going to meet Starfleet, he still doesn't know if they're any good. They could just snatch him up and kill him too. So it is scary to do this. And for whatever reason, he takes her with him originally. And then when she says, she's getting that urge to leave, you can see he kind of ushers her back kind of for her own good at first. Whether that's how it works out or not, because she'd probably be better off leaving with him. But he doesn't know where he's going either. It's not like he knows for a fact this is better than where I'm leaving. And I feel like that, I don't think this was written in on purpose. I don't think that compassion really played a part in the writer's room. But I think if you were trying to follow this through, you could still fit this into the pattern of the first two.
Yeah. And it was brought up on postcards how it might be like a refugee type of situation. And compassion, I think you're right, plays along with that it's like, it's dire. You are going to die where you are. So you're going to forge and go someplace new. That unknown, is what so many refugees have had to go through and live through because they want this better life. And yeah, I can see that as compassion.
Yeah. The only thing that I was hesitant, because when Georgiou first showed up, I went, oh, well, here, this is going to be it. This is Starfleet coming to save the day. There's your compassion. And then she's like, only you, everyone else dies. Oh. Well, there went that idea. So that kind of ruined that theory for me, but
maybe we'll get the follow-up in season 2.
Right, which kind of bothers me that it's in season 2 now that Georgiou's dead, because it's not like she goes back and fixes a wrong.
Yeah.
At some point, they're going to be back there and fix the wrong, but she's going to have nothing to do with it.
Yeah, that's true.
So she still died, never going back.
Oh.
Which
I know. I want Prime Georgiou back. She's so awesome.
No, instead we're going to have Mira Georgiou there trying to eat them.
Yes. Oh.
So,
she's going to have to learn not to do that.
Okay, but that's another thing that I actually enjoy about this short that follows through with what Discovery's doing. Not that I like that Kelpiens are being murdered by the dozen, but it follows suit that we believe, at least you can reasonably believe they're being taken for food, right? It's what we've heard. It's what we kind of see here, and that they're being transported somewhere, and I just assume they're being murdered and eaten. It follows on both sides of here and Mirror that you're not really that different from who you are. And the Kelpiens are exactly the same position. Nothing has changed for them. All that's changed for them is who their captors are.
Right.
The Baul is the captors here, and the Terrans are the humans, basically. The Terrans are the captors there. And that's the only difference. And in Mirror, they've seen their captors, and here they have not.
Okay, so we've had a really nice discussion about the Brightest Star. And so I think I like, again, discussing this. And listeners, please go onto the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook, and tell us your comments. I know we read a lot of them on postcards from the Edge, but I am really enjoying the Brightest Star. The themes of curiosity and hope overcoming fear. That's the most beautiful, I think, that we get from this short trek. I love getting this deeper context for Saru's character. I think that's very important. And I hope that they continue that throughout the breaks of highlighting different characters and getting to know them better with that context. I think that's a really cool idea that the writers came up with. And Oh, the music was amazing. And you're right. The shots and the scenery. And I remember sort of complaining about the first two, that it was like, it felt so isolated. This one didn't. We got to see, the father, the sister, sort of this community. So I really liked that it felt like a whole episode, and the timing was spot on. It was really a great, great episode. So well done.
Yeah, I completely agree. I love this episode. This was by far my favorite. It would have been probably my favorite even if I liked the other two. I think it gave you a complete story. I think it gave you more of a story on Saru. I think it's something they can expand on. I think that even the few things about like people's questions with hunters and stuff, that can all be answered easily without messing up what was told to us here. And because of that, I really enjoyed this. I really liked it. I didn't on my initial watch. I was really frustrated with it. And then as I sat and thought about it and listened to other people's perspectives on it, I realized, no, all of this fits perfectly. You might have to move it around in your head, but that's okay. Star Trek's supposed to make you think. You're not supposed to understand it all the very first time you watch something. That's why some of us watch episodes 10, 20, 30, 50 times over our lifetime, because you do learn new things with each and every watch of Star Trek. At least I think you should. And that this has already done that for me once. So I can only imagine if I watch it a week from now, if that changes again, or 2 weeks from now, or at the end of next season, how that changes.
You're right. That is such a good point. It depends on where you are in your life and what you're going to bring into it and what you're going to take from it. That's a great point. Well, it's been fun talking about the Brightest Star today, but this isn't the only thing we've been discussing on the network. So here's a quick look at some of the other things you may have missed elsewhere on Trek FM.
Previously on Trek.fm, the 602 Club.
Robert the Bruce isn't sort of one of these stories that we kind of get told a lot really in school, and it's kind of funny that you're talking about that you've just read this kind of book about, my first king, as it essentially were, whereas at school I spent a year learning about American history and kind of the rise to American Civil War as Civil War over. Like, there never is much kind of conversation about kind of Scottish history, right, with certain things like the Jacobites and perhaps, the classic world wars, for example. So, like, it's really interesting to almost have this discussion.
Melodic Treks.
I think it's notes and the combinations that they use. So they will use dissonance, so notes that don't really that clash and don't really go against each other, and they'll use minor chords. They'll use diminished chords because those sound, the saddest, the most frightening. They'll use those. Maybe an augmented chord here and there.
Literary Treks.
Data should have been XO half a decade ago. He should have been first officer on this ship. I have cost him years in his career because I didn't get out of his way, because I was too comfortable, because I didn't want to shake up my life, because I was scared. This is why I'm done being scared. I'm done being comfortable. I'm taking command of the Titan. That's the moment Riker says, I got to wake up. My life could end tomorrow. I need to do more. I need to be more.
Warp 5.
Okay, so Frankenstein kills a couple people, right? Kills an old man, kills an old woman, scares a bunch of people, goes on the run, scares some Girl Guides, right?
Yeah, some Girl Scout guides, yep.
Girl Scout guides, takes her cookies.
Yeah.
And that's what else is happening on Trek.fm.
Check out all these shows and join the conversation on your favorite corner of the Star Trek universe and beyond. You'll find us wherever you get your podcasts. If you're an Apple user, be sure to hit the subscribe button in Apple Podcasts on iPhone, iPad, or Apple TV, or the desktop iTunes app to get the latest episodes as soon as they are published. And please leave us a star rating or written review.
If you're not an Apple user, we've got you covered as well. You can find our shows on Google Play Music, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spreaker, SoundCloud, YouTube, Windows Phone, in most third-party apps, and you can stream and download the MP3 file from our website or grab the RSS link.
We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's show, and there are many ways for you to do that. The best place to join the larger conversation is the Babel Conference, our listeners group on Facebook. Just type Babel, B-A-B-E-L, into the search field on Facebook, and it should come right up. If you'd like to send us email, you can use the form on our website at trek.fm/contact. Choose to send to a show and select The Edge. That will come right to us, kind of. You can also find the network on Twitter at TrekFM and on Facebook at facebook.com/TrekFM. So, Amy, when you're not being the brightest star of Trek FM, where can people find you?
Oh. Well, that doesn't happen very often, but you can find me here on the network. I do a little show called Earl Grey about Next Generation with Justin and Richard. I am on Twitter at Miss Amy Nelson, and I'm tweeting about my Deep Space Nine rewatch. I'm in season 5. It's very exciting. And you can find me on the Babel Conference on Facebook. So, Patrick, when you are not looking up to the stars, overcoming your fear, where can people find you?
Well, if I'm not there or the emergency room, they can find me on Twitter because they don't let you have phones in the emergency room anymore. But you can find me on Twitter at MagicDrop5. It's one word. The 5 is a digit. You can also find me on the Babel Conference. I'm especially looking at these threads lately because I do want to hear what the listeners have to say. So I've been trying to check that out, considering we're getting actually new content, and I want to hear their thoughts. And you can find me over on the network at the at Warp 5 with Brandon and Brandy. Brandon is taking a little bit of a break right now, but he will be back. And actually, he should be back for an episode fairly soon because he wants to do Son of Frankenstein. So we're trying to get that worked out so that he can come on for that one.
Very good. If you'd like to help us keep all of our shows coming to you each week, you can become a patron of the network on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/TrekFM. That's patreon.com/TrekFM to get all the details. Perks include early access to episodes, exclusive content, producer credits, and more available through our special patrons website, Patron Zone. It requires a great deal of money to produce, host, and distribute these shows each month. We really appreciate any support you can give us and hope you'll join the team. Again, you'll find all the details at patreon.com/TrekFM.
We'd also like to thank the Kelpiens who have also joined Starfleet just recently. They are Norman C. Lau, Tony Robinson, Thomas Puleo, Lisa Slack, Shoaib Mirza, Richard Rutledge, James Muldrow, Cornelia Reutner, Ryan Mellette,
and Chris Trabuzio, our newest
I didn't want to mess up his name. Didn't want to ruin his name. I say it on both shows. Yes, Chris Trabuzio, who I talk to like daily. Thank you for supporting Trek FM and especially The Edge.
Well, good. I'm glad that you didn't say that our associate producers were the ones who were sacrificed to the Ba'ul. So
no, we're not. No, we need them.
We need them. We do.
Yeah, if the Ba'ul asks, it's war.
Yeah. Well, thank you for listening, and join us next time to see what's happening on the edge of Federation space.